Okay, so continuing where we left off, last thing we did was model the hair and then fix the normals and also UV unwrap. And now we're going to go into, I decided that maybe there should be two different methods of texturing because some people might not be able to afford ZBrush right now. So maybe all you have is Photoshop. And again, Photoshop itself is pretty expensive too. But there are alternatives as well. So, don't feel like you have to use Photoshop. I have Photoshop and I also have Pixelmator. And Pixelmator is significantly cheaper. I got this copy for like $30 if I remember correctly. And it could not be that much more expensive now. Whereas Photoshop itself is around $600-700, I think this copy was. I can't remember. But let's just start with Photoshop. So here we are. First thing we notice, we have this hair piece, and we have it already unwrapped here in our UVs. Now, what we want to do is transfer this into Photoshop, and it'll help create a guideline for how we're going to create these textures. So what you want to do is, with this model selected in object mode, make sure it's object mode, select it so it's green, open the UV texture editor window by pressing here, and this will open up here. And over here there's another set of submenus here under polygons, and you just go UV snapshot. And over here you can set the size. And when you're making textures, things should be multiples of 8. So let's say the size of a texture is going to be 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, 512, 1024, 2048, and I'm not sure if anyone's going to go up higher than that. Some people will probably do. I don't know. But then you decide where you're going to do it. And let's just say, temp. And let's go image. And that's where I'm going to save it. And then I just select a format that works for me. I'll say PNG is fine, and just press OK. I'm going to make this hair 1024. So I just press OK. So now that's open, and what I do is I go to Photoshop, and let's say I open that. So I go to Desktop, Temp, and then I go to Image. So now I have it open. This is how it looks like at 100%. You might not be able to see it because it's transparent, but let's say I create a new layer under it, and now you can see it. And this, I'm just going to make this the background layer. Now, depending on the color of the guy's hair, you'll probably want to make your background color that color. And it's a good idea to do that because it'll make it easier for you to generate normal maps later on. And it also if you can do transparencies, it'll save you some time with not having to so for when you're doing your textures. And you should do it in layers as well. So use a painting program that supports layers if you can. I'm just going to set this as my background. We'll make him blonde, I guess, and the darkest color of a blonde person's hair would probably be something more sandy like that. So now that we got the background filled out and we've got our outline here as a guide, you can kind of just work out. For example, if you go back here, we know what these sections of hair are based on our own unmapping of it. So over here, let's say this is just there's many different ways to paint this. You can do it more traditionally by just using Photoshop Paint, and you'd have to be a pro at painting in Photoshop to do that. But I'm going to show you a quick technique from my old days when I didn't paint so much. I used more of line drawing techniques because I wasn't much of a painter. If I was going to paint it, I would probably just do it in layers of colors, and I would slowly just build it up in several layers, and you wouldn't be able to know what it looked like until I actually finished. But for now, let's just use an old school technique. I'm going to select the line tool here. I'm going to make sure that it's not a shape or a path. I'll make sure I'm using pixels or a rasterized. So let's say I have these strands of hair, and just looking over here, you can where is this? Over here, you can see that the root is going to come from the side here and basically stop here on his head. So you just want to make sure that the roots come out from there when you're drawing these lines. Now it's going to look really kind of lame, I suppose is the right word, and it's going to take a while, but you just keep doing this, and you just create these lines to create the hair, and don't worry too much about how scraggly it looks, because we're basically working in very thin lines. It looks like a bad pencil drawing, but the point is just to get the shape down. And let's just pretend I'm filling this out really nicely and distributed well. I suggest you do this method of doing things is you always start from the outside, and then what you do is you always kind of break it up in halves using these lines, and that'll make it easier to follow the contour. So you just always go in between perfectly halfway, and then eventually you just keep going and you will get the outline. I'll just do this. I'll just do a cheat here, just to get it done fast. But you should do it properly, and just finish out. Keep just doing those lines. This is just me duplicating this and resizing it. That takes us a lot closer. I'm gonna change this color to some, so I know this is the outline and don't accidentally draw on it. So I usually do set my layers to different colors, so I know what I'm looking at when I'm drawing. Make sure I have the right one selected. So you just keep doing this and creating the hair, and you don't worry about how it looks like right now, because we're going to actually filter it and do all these things to it to make it work, and it's going to be a cartoony kind of style hair. But you know, for games, sometimes painted hair looks better than realistic hair. And if you're planning to get into Photoshop, I would recommend getting the latest version, which is Photoshop 6, as far as I know right now. And what Photoshop 6 gives you is more filters, and there's these tools that can help improve the way this looks. But yeah, you can use any tool. Technically you can do this with MS Paint if you wanted to create really strange textures. But you can use any paint program, and you just have to learn how to use it, that's all. And you'll notice that I'm not using a pencil tool. It's because I'm on a trackpad right now from a laptop, and generally you know, for anyone who's using a mouse as opposed to a tablet, a drawing tablet, you don't have a lot of control over how you draw curves and such. So the mistake a lot of people use who don't have drawing tablets is they often just use a brush or a pen tool, and then they find it impossible to do curves. They have to like draw in straight lines and stuff. But what I use is the line tool, and just, you know, using my own brain, I gradually just pull out the line. For example, I'm just going to do it out here. You know, if I was using a brush or a pencil, let's get a pencil, and I try to draw a curve, you know, it might not be easy for other people who aren't as skilled with it. They might go like this, you know, but then if you use a line tool, and you know, this line tool is anti-aliased, I have it set to on, so it won't look like jaggedy when I have anti-aliasing on. Right? What you can do is you can gradually create the curve by just holding it, you know, and you don't have to feel pressured about how to draw a line, and you can see it looks nice and curved. And you know, when I first started using Photoshop, I used to do a lot of line-based drawings, and then later on, when I advanced some more, I started using painting methods instead, which is more of a layered approach where you draw kind of a blotchy image, and then you refine it until it's perfectly detailed. But okay, so let's say we have this. So I'm just gonna merge all these layers here, and you have all these strands of hair, and what you want to do is just let's just look at it first. So I'll save it as a PSD, and you know, just I'll call this hair map, and I'll go into this program, and what I want to do is create a new material, and depending on the person's hair, you know, I suggest you either use you could use a Fong, but then it would be really shiny and rubbery and maybe artificial looking. And I guess for now I'm just going to use a blend. If you want it to be perfectly matte, I would suggest using a Lambert, but we'll just use a blend for now, because I don't want it like that. You press this button here, go to a PSD file, and you find your PSD, and then you find your hair map. So now it's loaded on this blend. I'll just call this hair map, maybe matte. And what I like to do is I like to use proper naming. So what I'll do is I'll change it to hair matte file text, and then when I go back here, I'll change this to place hair matte file text. So I have proper naming, and that's really important to me. But what I can do is I can now apply hair matte, and as you can see, this is just the initial look of it. You can see the lines, they so far it looks okay. It looks like it's going in the right direction, but obviously I have the outlines in a layer, so that's why it's showing the wireframe, but it's actually in the texture. But then the lines from the hair strands are in there, and they seem to be going the right direction. So I actually did an okay job of that. Now what I gotta do in Photoshop is, you know, I gotta turn that into something that kind of is passable as hair. So something I like to do right away is just I like to duplicate this, and since it's just black, I don't have to worry. But what I'll do is I'll use the keyboard and I'll just push it down, and then you can see it makes the lines thicker because there's actually two copies of the strands of hair now, just overlapping each other, but one is slightly pushed down, so it's not perfectly covering it. And what I like to do with the second one is just I invert it, and then I put it behind the black. So now these strands have a slight what do you call it? It's like a reflection to it, kind of like at one angle of the strand it's dark, and the other side it's bright, and that's because the light's reflecting on one side and creating a shadow on the other. So with that, you know, what I can do is I can merge those together, and then now there's all these filters you can choose from. There's so many different things you can do. So if you just look in the filter gallery and just zoom in here, you know, just zoom in button here, and you can just drag it. And there's so many things you can do just to kind of make it less look like obvious lines. But personally, I'm just gonna use a motion blur because it's easier, right? For right now, I use a motion blur, and I use just a subtle, and I make sure I go mostly in the direction of the hair. And I sort of created something that looks like it. Let's try duplicating this layer. So now there's two of them here. I'm just going to go in the bottom one and try that motion blur again. So we're sort of creating something here. Now just change the opacity on this a little bit. Something else you can try is I use the magic wand. I select all the area around the hair because it's just blank. Then I go select, and I inverse it so that I'm only selecting the area where the hair is. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit, and I'm going to copy merged. And what that is, it copies everything that in the lasso area that you actually see with your eyes, I'm going to do, and while it's still selected that area, I'm going to paste it so it centers it there. So now I have, if I hide these two layers here, now I have a flattened layer where I have this, and then I can do a whole bunch of things there. I can add a noise. And what the noise will let me do is it'll let me add mess around with the filters a little bit more. For example, if I'm cross-hatching, then it'll be more effective. And of course, all I have to do is turn down the stroke length, turn down the sharpness, or I could turn up the sharpness. Just adjust the strength. I could use all these different effects. You know, I don't like the black intensity too much. But once you generally got it, you got something like that, and then you know you can keep layering and you keep working on it, and you eventually get something that looks that can pass off as hair. Now, Photoshop 6 has something very useful here that can just fix all your problems right away. Let's say you got something messy like this, but from far away it kind of looks like hair. So what you can do is you can just use oil paint, and what this will do is perfectly clean up all your lines and create all those swooping textures. You can see here it's pretty much perfect for kind of cartoony hair, and you can adjust it to get whatever degree of smoothness you want. So right here, it's probably just created like a nice little sweet spot, and now there we got it. You know, I mean, Photoshop 6 pretty much saved our butts there. Of course, I could have just smoothed it manually as well, and just keep working on it. If you don't have Photoshop 6, like that's pretty much how I've always done it, just manually, you know. And I just as you keep doing it, you'll eventually find your own techniques that'll work for you. You know, and because you keep layering it and keep doing it, and always duplicating your old layers, keeping a copy of it, you know, and just keep doing it on top like that. But for now, this pretty much works. I'm just gonna change the color. So what I can do is Photoshop is I can use a color overlay, change the color, and what it's going to do is going to color it whatever color I choose here. And I want something that's slightly more, just a little bit more vibrant of a yellow, but it doesn't look too fake. So something for more of a blonde, you have to go slightly into the orange area here. And press OK. And now I'm just going to check the opacity, just slightly make it 60%. And there we have it. So I can just save this right now, and what I'll do is I'll go here, and what can I do here is I go to Edit UV Text Editor. This is just a quick way to do it right away. Just go right here. There's a button here that says Reload the PSD. You just press it, and see it'll reload the PSD. And what you have here now is something that works for hair. So that's if you just repeat that process, you can basically get it all. You can basically finish his whole head of hair. You know, what I did is used ZBrush though, so that's why this is an older method. I don't really use it anymore because now that we have ZBrush, it just fixes all your problems. But this is still pretty effective. You can see this is pretty passable. You know, how would I improve upon this? I would want to take a brush and I would darken the roots like that. Then I'd make it slightly see-through. I'd make another layer. I'd darken slightly closer here. And I would just create this kind of gradual look. I might want to make another layer and add a little bit of shine to the upper edge. And just fix it up a bit. You know, if you save that over here, If you reload it, you can see it looks even more convincing now. You got these dark roots. You got a ridge that's gonna reflect some more light, and you can just keep tweaking it like that. Just keep working on it. Look at actual pictures of hair. You can see over here what I did here. It doesn't look as the lines look different than over here. Maybe you'll even prefer this one, you know, because it's obviously got more detail than the hairstyle I used over here, which this one was actually done in ZBrush. If I want to, I can go into the texture later and tweak it, but what it did was it kind of created a low resolution matte material, and I'm just going to continue using that because it's better for my game overall if I continue to use more blurry textures, because there's an inconsistency with the character models and the level of detail in the like hair, or I just have to make sure that it's consistent, because if you have like high quality mailboxes on a street that looks really low quality, then it looks like just looking really bad for your game. You just want to make sure you use the same level of quality and everything looks like it belongs in the same world. So this is just this was a quick way of showing you how to do it in Photoshop. But when it comes to ZBrush, it's I guess it's going to be slightly different. But ZBrush has the advantage in that you can create bump maps pretty easily. So let's say you went to Maya first, right? And what you do is you select it and you go to File and you export your selection, and you select it as hair piece. Let's just say you export it. What you do is you use the OBJ export, and you might have to go into plugins and turn that on, because some people might have it disabled, and sometimes it just disables itself. And then from ZBrush, what you'll do is you'll import hair piece, and you can see it shows up here, or here at least. And what you do is you click it, then you click and drag, and you might want to hold Shift to orient it to an axis, and then you release. And what you want to do is press T, and what that does is it readies this to be manipulated. Now the controls in ZBrush are different from Maya, so if you're not used to ZBrush, you don't use the same. What you do is when you want to rotate it, you hold this button and you click and drag it. And same with scaling and same with move. Now when it comes to texturing it and creating this creating a bump map, as well as just painting on the hair, what you want to do is first you go to the geometry, and then you want to start dividing it. And what I will do is I will usually divide it until I don't see any detail. So about this is close enough, pretty much. And from here I can start painting actual details into the geometry. And what this divide actually does is it was subdividing the faces of the polygons. So this has significantly more polygons now than it did when I imported it. It's probably like if you divide something into if you divide something 7 times, it's exponential, the amount of detail in this piece of hair is now. So let's just say I choose a brush first, and I go to Rake, and I choose a small size, like a 24. And what I can do is I can just first just kind of like a brief intro to ZBrush is when you just click on the clay, it raises it in the format of the brush you're using. If you hold Alt, then it sinks it in. But if you hold Shift, it tries to smooth it out as best it can. So just remember that for most of this hair, we're going to be sinking it in. So I'm holding Alt right now, and what I'm doing is I'm just creating these hair strands. These might be too large for hair, so I can even bring the brush smaller, but then it's just going to take longer to do. But then it'll be so worth it, because you just have to do it once basically. So here I am, I'm just creating these strands, and you don't have to make them exactly lined up. Your fingers might be it might not be still enough to do it anyways. But I can even just go quickly, but then you'll suffer for it, I guess. So I'll just move slow enough that the brush can add the detail, and I'll just continue this process throughout the whole head. What I'm doing is just raking this, just raking the detail. And you should probably do it in the same direction that you want the hair to be convincing. So this right here, it's too far back. I probably should have started up here because the hair comes out of the head. So we'll just do it like this. And all along the top here are roots, so I would do this too. Just make sure that I'm moving in this direction of the roots. So we'll just do one side, just do it quickly, because there's no sense in doing all of it just for the tutorial. But we'll just, you know, have steady hands. And let's just pretend I did all of it. Right, this is just for example's sake. So now, what I want to do with this texture is I want to create a bump map or a normal map. So with this, first of all, you can't create a normal map of the highest resolution. So what would I have to do is I would have to divide it again to use it at this resolution, but it's already more detailed than necessary, so I'll just go down a resolution instead of subdividing it again. And what I'll see, now you can see that you kind of suffer in detail a little bit. So, you know, if the first time you do it, you should just go a little bit higher, I suppose. You know, I can go back up, and then what I can do is I can divide it again, and then go down to the lower res, and then, as you can see, the detail is still there now. So from there, I just click geometry to close this area, and I'll go to normal map. And what I'll do is make sure this is all selected. You might want to turn off smooth UV, but you can just experiment with these. But what you want to do first is just click create normal map, and you can see it's thinking and it's creating the normal map, and then there it's done. So now you have this normal map here. You can't really see the details, but you know, you just press it first and you go clone NM, and then you go to texture. So let's see, it doesn't look like a lot of the detail made it onto there, and I'm not really sure why that is. It's because it's supposed to, but maybe I'll just try going down a resolution and see what happens. So I'm going to create that again. So there it is. Now I can see it. It might have shown up. It might have been too fine for me to see in the thumbnail. So, you know, you can go ahead and try use the old one. But anyways, we'll just say you generate it, and you might not be able to see details because there's too fine, and plus we didn't actually bump map the whole headpiece. So you kind of you can't really tell from this thumbnail anyways. But I click clone here, and now you can see it's here. It just pops up here when it's cloned. And under texture, what you can do is make sure you have this one selected, and then you just flip vertical, because ZBrush uses its UV maps upside down. So you just press this once, and this thing will change. So the strands of hair will be on the bottom. You might not be able to see it with your hair, or if this video compresses at too low resolution in YouTube, but the detail is there. I can see it with my eyes. And what you do is you export it, and you just call it hair bump normals, and I'll just name it that. So now it's exported, and then in Maya, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to hair matte, where I already selected this material for the map. I'll click hair map again, go to bump mapping here, and then just select your PSD file, and I'll just call this hair bump to name it properly. Hair bump file text here. It's selecting one because I already created one before I started modeling. Obviously, I already had the hair. You can see it on the other side. But then over here under image from name, I'll choose hair bump normals. And now it should be normal mapped. Now you can't see it in the normal view, but if I go to high quality rendering, and some people's computers can't do this, or they might have a different graphic card and it might crash on them. But just anyways, you can see that obviously the bump mapping is making its way through the model here. And you know, I didn't do the whole hair, so obviously you can't see all of it. But you know, the detail that is there, you can clearly see that it's working. So that's a cool advantage of in ZBrush, for example. Now, if you want to take it one step further, after you've painted all those details onto your model, let's just say go back to your standard brush here. Now you want to paint directly onto the model, because you know it's extremely difficult to Photoshop in strange curves for the UV map. And what you can do is you can just go to texture, and let's say you import. We'll just use this for now, but or I already created one here, so I'll just use this maybe. So yeah, this is the old hair I created. If we want to use the new one I created, we can just use that. And this is the piece of hair that I created we created earlier in Photoshop. Let's just use this one. It'll just simplify things. But you know, you can use Photoshop and make a straight hair just like that. You can see it's straight up and down, right? Vertical. And what you can just do is add it to your spotlight. And what spotlight is it lets you paint directly onto it. Now, right now, this mode is just the move mode. And what you can do is wherever you click, this thing's gonna follow you. This wheel. Don't worry about any of these things here. All you really need is this button, which is if you click and drag it, it'll rotate, or this one, if you click and drag it, it'll scale, right? And this one will just pin it in its position, but you don't need that. You only really need the rotate and the scale. So what you want to do is, if you want to hide it because you need to rotate your head, you just press Shift and Z, and now it's hidden, but it's still there. It's just hidden. But what you can do is you can rotate your head, so you get into a position where you can paint on it. For example, let's say I do this over here. Now I press Shift Z again to bring it back. And right now we're in paint mode. But if you press Z, what Z does is it toggles this transformation mode. So what I can do is I can rotate it and I can line it up. And then when you press Z, you're in paint mode. But you can't paint it yet. You can't paint it yet. What you have to do is go to your material and use something that's a blank canvas, like right here, matte cap white. That's always there. You just click it, and now it's white. So now you can actually see where you're painting. So when I press Shift Z again to bring this up, and obviously press Shift Z to take it away. And then right now in this mode, I'm in painting mode. But when I press Z, it brings up the spotlight. Then I could scale it, and I want to make sure it's scaled properly so that it looks like the strands of hair are the right proportions, because no one's going to have a spaghetti size hair, and if you do it this big, then the hair is too big. You want to make sure that it's the exact size of hair on your head, and then you press Z to make that go away, and then just choose whatever brush size you need to get the work done. So as you can see now, this brush size is within this confines of this hair area, and that's good. Last thing you gotta do is just turn off Z add so that you don't start sculpting the head, and you also turn on RGB so that you can start painting on this piece of hair. So as you see, I click now, and what's happening is I'm actually painting directly onto the model from the spotlight. So now I can press Shift Z to hide that, and now I can rotate my head, and you can see that I've just painted directly onto the hair. And this is really just simplifies this whole process, because when you finally do let's just say you kept rotating around, and let's say you press Shift Z, and you brought this up. You press Z to rotate it into position. Scale it up, put it where you wanted. Press Z again, and then just start painting it. And let's say you did that, and obviously you would rotate it for when you've got hair going at certain angles or whatever. And also make sure that you're working at a high resolution. So what you would do now is you go to texture map, and you go new from polypaint. Now earlier we made sure that no UVs were overlapping, and that's really important because if you press new from polypaint and you have overlapping UVs, it's going to cause a lot of problems. So I just press new from UV map, and you can see see, this is the hair that's painted onto my UV map, and it's going to be curved exactly as it needs to be depending on how you painted it on the model. And all you got to do is just when you're satisfied with it, just press clone texture, so it goes up here. Then go to texture, make sure it's selected, flip it vertical, because remember ZBrush for some reason decides to do it vertically, and just export it. And you can just export it as it's going to come out as a PSD, I suppose. And just press hairpiece. And now in Maya, we can go to our hair mat that we created earlier, and we can just select. I'm just going to change the name. There's no point in browsing to it because I memorized the name. So now it's hair mat, and this is the texture we just painted on in ZBrush. So as you can see, this is just a really simple workflow. If you notice these see-through things, that's just happening because we're in high quality rendering mode, and it's really a dysfunctional, like this, for some reason Maya hasn't perfected it yet. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. If you use any transparency at all, it could even crash Maya. So just make sure that you save your work, and you don't really need it because you're gonna see the bump map in your game engine anyways. But yeah, this is the general process of creating textures and a bump map from ZBrush. You can put work in through Photoshop, and you're gonna need Photoshop anyways. You can't just get by without it. So I would use Photoshop or Pixelmator or whatever other painting program is available to you, like GIMP, or some other people use some. I can't remember the name of it, but it could have been I can't remember, Art Rage or something. But yeah, this is all you need. I would recommend ZBrush because, as you can see, that's so much simpler, just painting on the hair. I don't even know how it would begin to, for example, in Photoshop, I don't even know how it would begin to start cloning all these strands of hair into this. I mean, you could try it, and you could just keep blending it in and smudging it. I used to do it that way with my older models, but that was a really time-consuming process, and the hair usually just suffered for it because it did not look very detailed or nice at all. So I would recommend ZBrush because it just simplifies this whole process. You can just see that it just takes a few moments to do this. It's not working. Alright, well, that's supposed to be working. I don't know what happened now, but anyways, that's basically the whole process of creating a texture for your character and making sure it's bump mapped, and then it's just one step closer to finishing your piece of hair. Now there's one other thing I want to talk about, and that's using alphas. Now, for this kind of hairpiece where we go in and out, you don't really create alphas for it. But for something like the sideburns, for example, what you can do is create an alpha for it. For example, hair does not perfectly end here. So, if you were to create little, for example, cuts like this into the hair, Alternatively, you can use over here the lasso tool, but use a polygonal lasso tool. And what you can do is, you can just kind of cut into the hair. And let's say I just fill it with black. And this is just a quick job. Normally I would take more detail. I would just go in more and make sure that it looks like realistic. And I should be filling it black. And then what I do is, for this little piece of for this layer where I just drew this black thing here, I would right click at it, I'd select pixels, and from there I would create an alpha channel. And in Photoshop, what you do is you go to channels, and I can only tell you how to do this in Photoshop. I'm not familiar with the other programs and how to do that in that program. In Photoshop, what you do is you create the alpha channel, and in black is what's going to be invisible, whereas what's white is going to be in your model visible. So what I do is we create. I fill this with. I invert it, and then I make the rest white, because just in this case because it was black before. But as you can see, when I have RGB selected, that's when I'm manipulating the texture. But when I have alpha, that's when I'm painting on the alpha. So you can, when you use black, you want to make stuff, you paint it to make stuff invisible. And you can see when it's showing up red here, it's actually just showing you what's becoming alpha. And you can either have it fully invisible or you can have it slightly transparent. And for hair, sometimes you want to do that. You want to make it slightly transparent, just a little bit like that, as well as have the hard edges to show the edges, at the ends, the hair ends, to make it just sharp. So you would fill this in, and you would make these sharp strands of hair, and you would fill it perfectly black. And over here, and we're just manipulating the alpha, and that's it. So zooming out. I don't know why that happened. Change back to default. Okay. So now when you save this, it's going to create its alpha here. We're just doing this for example. Don't do this for your actual model, because there's a reason why we won't do this for the actual model, but I'm just showing you how to do it, because you would want to know how to do it for the sideburns, because that's how I created the sideburns. See, it's just a big piece of polygon, but when we create those little jagged edges in it, it looks like hair coming out from his sideburns. So we're just doing this for example. Don't actually do it, because it won't make sense for this model. But anyways, you would go into the color where you added this hairpiece here. Just reload it so that it loads the alpha information. Okay, where is this? Okay, we have to select the hair. Okay, so this is the old hair we created, not the one in ZBrush. So that's the one I was modifying, unfortunately. And what you would do is, after you select the hair matte, you would go to the color, and when you reload it, this should no longer be grayed out like this. This is, see, composite is grayed out. This should no longer grayed out because we have an alpha channel on it now. So we can select that alpha channel, and you can see it makes it transparent. Now for this hairpiece, like I said, we shouldn't do it for this hairpiece because this hairpiece is three-dimensional. So what you're going to end up doing is seeing through the model. So you don't want to do that. So you don't want to do that for this particular part of the hair. And you know, that's one of the decisions you have to make when you're modeling this character and planning it out. That you make sure that for things like this, where the hair is supposed to be kind of like that, you want to make sure that you create maybe a separate geometry, like I did for the hairpiece over here. So you can see this area here is meant to be transparent, and it's separate from the main geometry here. And same thing with the sideburns; they're separate because there's no backside to them, and you will never see the backside of them because they're so close to the piece of to the hair that you will never see through it. Like this, for example, you can see right through it over here. So you wouldn't do that for the main headpiece. but you would do it for additional pieces of hair. And it's always a good idea to add additional pieces of hair. Over here, you can see that there is a distinct problem here, is that, you know, at the side of his head, it's too smooth here, you know, and you got to make that. You either got to make a creative decision here. You can add extra geometry to overlap it so that you can have this kind of alpha hair over it, or you can just live with it, and it just depends on the consistency of your characters, the detail of them. So yeah, that's this is the second part, third part, I suppose, since I divided the other video. This is the third part, and you know, that should have covered everything you need to know about texturing and creating bump maps for your character's hair. And that's pretty much it. It's pretty much done. The only other thing you might want to do with hair is, you know, create some blend shapes so that when your guy's falling, his hair is going to go up in the wind, or you can use bones to do that. And that would depend on the shape of your hair and what you've allowed to happen. For example, this character, I cannot add bones to him because if I want to move his hair around, his roots have to be rooted into his actual head, so I have to make sure that it wouldn't change any of that. And how I would do that is probably by painting weights. I would make it very strict so that none of the roots would move, and so I guess, yeah, it is possible. But I would just personally use blend shapes because the character's hair animation is not that complicated. It's not going to be that important to the gameplay, especially if this character is like a first-person character. Then if he's only going to see himself if he looks in the mirror, and there's not going to be any cutscenes because it's a virtual reality game where you're going to be wearing a headset anyways. So you will never see this character in the third person. But for other characters, it might be a good idea.